Perfect. And then you tell me I have to call in. And there's no game this weekend. What are we doing? What's happening here?
I don't, you know,
I don't know what to do. I don't know. I'm at a loss here, just given all the soccer that's happening and no Galaxy news and no audio. I mean, we need to figure this out. Rough times for all of us.
I should have just lit the computer on fire and just gone from there. I think
fair.
that would have been the correct thing. Also, I would like to say, and I would like to point out that I could have at some point just decided that just to throw this show away, and instead we powered through. And you know,
we will overcome.
If Bill Gates is listening, hey, I know you think Teams is the same as Skype, and I know all the people are going to be, you just need to learn just Teams. You're right, I do need to learn Teams. But what Skype did in one step, one tiny little step, what Skype did in one step takes 7 steps in Teams, and then it doesn't work correctly. So, yeah, that's sort of where we're at right now. I apologize in advance. I will work over the weekend to figure out what's still going on, but uninstalling it, installing it back, installing the binaries, turning it on, turning it off again, doing all that sort of stuff did not solve the problems, even though, it said that might work for all of that. So yeah, that's what we got so far. If you're on the YouTube spot, I hope you enjoyed the lip sync. That was for everybody who wanted to try to figure out what we were saying. Anybody who maybe is a little sensitive to sounds, the first part of that was for you. The next part will be ASMR, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, go ahead.
I like where we're going with this. Yeah. ASMR is what we're doing next. I'm just going to continue to say this. RIP Skype, and they blew a lead. They had it. We could have been a Skype show, but for whatever reason, they lost to Zoom, and we can't seem to figure these things out. So just it's a shame.
It is crazy to me. This is sort of like, how did Sears ever lose to Amazon? Like, Sears used to have all the stuff, right? They had everything if you ever went to Sears back in the day, they had everything you ever wanted. It was right there. You could order houses.
TVs,
yeah, you could order houses from Sears back in the day, right? So all that stuff. So you had it all. They were the original Amazon. They had this catalog. Like, how did you be like, oh, well, Amazon's just selling books? And it's like, well, we could sell books, or we could sell tools online and do the thing, and just completely lost out to Amazon. So this is a Skype thing now. So that's sort of where we're at. Yeah, this is a weird schedule for me. One is the Club World Cup is on DAZN, right? The DAZN network.
The Zone. Pronounce it correctly. I learned, just like we had our weather report last week.
Yes.
I learned fairly recently that DAZN is not DAZN or DZN. It's the Zone. So, gotta say that right.
It is crap, is what it is. All right. I don't, maybe I'm just going to be the old man today, Eric. I'm just going to be the old man, and I'm just get off my lawn, and everything new is crap, and everything else is just, I'm just trying to watch some of these games. And try to carry on through some of the stuff. It's not easy. They're not making it easy. And then I don't think the production is that great either. So that's me.
Well, Derek Williams, former LA Galaxy defender, he's been on the panel. He's been cashing some checks. Kai Kamara has been on there. So I'll at least give it to them for at least kind of getting some different faces. It's not the same faces that you see on every single thing there. But, to back up your old man quote, shout out to my dad. I know my dad, since he's probably looking at my picture right now, he usually likes to look into my eyes on the live feed to make sure that I'm doing okay from Southern California, checking in on me. But he was asking where one of the games were, and I was like, hey, it's on this app, DAZN. And he's like, well, I guess I'm not watching any games today. I guess I'm done. Whatever was on TV is what you watch. And I send him the link. Hey, it's this app.
Yeah, and there we go. Now apparently we've lost.
He knew his limits.
We lost you for a little while there too. This, you know what? Every once in a while you have to have a disaster show, right? Eric, maybe this is our disaster show. Does that make sense? Maybe this is the one that I just give up. There? Yeah, I hear you. I got you. I don't know if anybody else can hear you, but maybe this is the show that we just call it good, and we just, you know what? Maybe this is how COG ends right here, just today. It just gets too much, and we hit the end button and we just walk away. Maybe.
All right, done and done.
Yeah. All right. Good.
So do I repeat the story?
No.
Where did we lose me?
No, we got you.
Shout out to my dad.
Most of the way through that, so I think we're okay. So anyway, that's where we sit. Lots of soccer going on, lots of crazy stuff. I know certainly with Inter Miami beating Porto is sort of maybe the big story. Although I heard PSG just lost as well. So
Botafogo just beat PSG. So that to me comes across like a bigger upset. I think the narrative of this tournament, if you've been watching any of the Club World Cup, is, are the European giants touchable, or are some of these South American teams or teams from around the world going to give them games? And obviously today was the first time that we saw a big, I guess you consider it an upset, where Inter Miami took down Porto, and then with Botafogo from Brazil taking down, Champions League winners PSG. That's a major, major upset. PSG, given the work that they did in Champions League, to see them lose is kind of incredible. I'll touch back, just to circle it all the way back to the beginning, where you mentioned there's a lot of soccer happening right now. I feel like it's crazy for me to say this as someone who loves the sport. We have too much soccer.
Right.
There's too much happening right now. And the question was going to be, how serious are these teams going to take it? And I think you see the teams taking it seriously. And I think what you saw today with Miami, you saw Porto just got beat. They just flat out beat by Inter Miami. You can't say the narrative is, oh, these teams are treating it like preseason and they weren't trying. It might technically be preseason. They might be rusty, given the last time that they played games. But they have their lineups out there and they were trying. So you got to give credit to Miami for getting the first win for MLS. It hurts that it comes against a Portuguese team, but then you start getting those questions. Is MLS on par with the Primeira Liga in Portugal? Are they right there? And I think outside of the top three, the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. That's probably not going to be popular with my countrymates, but you think about the Portuguese league. Who do they have on some of their teams? Angel Di Maria, it's an aging superstar or aging star. Pepe and Iker Casillas, they retired at Porto not too long ago. And then they have rising stars, someone like Victor Gyökeres at Sporting and Rodrigo Mora at Porto. He played today. Those are kind of the guys who are going to have the big sale prices attached to them, and that's in the Portuguese league. And then how would you describe MLS? It's aging stars, you're Lionel Messi, and then youngsters on the rise. So it's really the same demographic, it's the same flavor. Benfica, Sporting, Porto, they all have a proven track record of selling on players who go on to make major impacts. So in that regard, it's not even close. Right. The Portuguese league has decades and decades of history, but the formula, I think, is the same. You bring in, you're going for the same players. It's these aging stars who are kind of on the downswing, and these stars who you hope to sell on to other things. So I think on their best day, a top MLS team can give a top three Portuguese team a game, and that's what we saw today. And I also think that, a solid MLS team, a 2024 LA Galaxy, you're not going to tell me that they wouldn't have beaten the bottom 2/3 of the Portuguese league last season with the way they were playing. We're talking about a league where João Pedro lost his spot on the LA Galaxy and then went on to become a captain of a first division team in Portugal. Right. Of course, they've since been relegated, but that gets a yeah, but still. For me. So I think this does show that MLS, at least compared to the Portuguese league, they're in the neighborhood if they're not knocking on the door.
Yeah, and I still think that if you're trying to and I think we were talking about this in the Discord a little bit, if you're trying to compare like the best of the European leagues, right? So the absolute best top, PSG, Chelsea's or Liverpool's or, that type of thing. If you're trying to compare the best against MLS's best, that's not a comparison, right? Those aren't going to match correct. Up.
It's not close.
You want to, as you sort of alluded to, you don't want to take, a really good MLS team and you want to pop them in the bottom of the English Premier League at the top of, the championship and type thing. Now we're starting to play a little bit like closer when everything's coming, but in this tournament and how it's going, we can certainly see, that there are some teams, Seattle. See, it's not Seattle's fault. But
although I am licking my chops at what PSG is going to do them, and now dropping a game and having Nuno Mendes, who plays for Portugal, playing for PSG, who locked up Lamine Yamal. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he could do against Jordan Morris. So I think that's something that's going to be exciting to watch.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. Everybody wants to know the picture that they're seeing. Is that your LinkedIn profile there, or is that?
You know what? I was curious. I was like, do I share my school picture?
Right.
Do I use? I dipped into the family portraits,
right.
the 2024 holiday photo. So you get a little. Get a little glimpse into Familia de Hammer.
Yeah.
And what some of those looks. Whenever we have the photographer come out to do those cards, we recently moved, so of course you send out cards like right. Moved, so right. Update the address, and then my wife and I, being the professionals that we are, we always say, hey, off to the side, can you take a professional headshot for us so we can have it for LinkedIn? And
right.
apparently for the podcast as well.
Yeah, always good. I thought it was your farmers only profile there, so didn't know. Cowboys only?
Yeah, you can't
Is
you
it
can't see the
Cowboys?
boots. You can't see the boots.
Okay. Okay, you can't see the boots. That's good. No, always good. Again, the soccer is at least interesting. They're updating us in the chat room. U.S. men's national team did beat Saudi Arabia 1-0. What a horrible game that was, all the way through.
I turned it off.
Yeah,
talking about too much soccer. I turned it off.
I was trying to do it while I was trying to solder my computer back together and doing all the fun stuff. So I was watching bits and pieces of it, and I was like, I can't. Why? Which is really interesting to me. You want to talk about something that has probably changed in two ways, but maybe could be more true than we think it is. It used to be back in the day, we would watch MLS and then you would watch national teams play, and you'd watch the U.S. men's national team play, and you're like, oh man, I wish MLS sort of had some of the capability that you're seeing these national teams play with. And in some ways, I now look at MLS and I go, I'd rather watch MLS teams play each other than watch some of these national team games that are being played right now. So yeah, I don't know what that says.
You ready for my spicy take? I said this in a different group chat. I had more fun watching the TST, the soccer tournament, the 7v7, than I got of anything in the Gold Cup so far.
Yes.
I was way too invested in Pumas de Alabama, and you're not going to get me interested in a Mexico versus Suriname or USA versus Saudi Arabia. I'd much rather watch Pat McAfee's Concafa play in 7v7. That's much more exciting and interesting to me. So maybe that's an entertainment issue. Right. You see the crowds too. That's a whole nother thing.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. Soccer's in a weird American soccer in particular is in a weird spot right now, especially a year out of a World Cup.
They're still showing that like the average overall crowd size for all of these games so far is about 34,000, which is rivals most of the leagues around the world. Right, it would be up there or above the averages of a lot of different leagues. I think EPL had higher average attendance. I think the Bundesliga had higher average attendance, but you're talking about again the top of the top in terms of the league. So
good call. I'd love to pay.
Oh my.
Look, you got the win.
I would love to tell you.
More?
Yeah, well, no, it's mostly that the Fox app on my phone then just decided to open up and start playing the CONCACAF Gold Cup. So I'm just here today. I'm just here today.
Soccer.
It's just I can't handle anything anymore. But no, just sort of looking at this. So are we seeing anything that's going to indicate what it's going to be like at the World Cup? I'll tell you this, that I have friends who are not from this country that live here now and are super excited and super pumped about the World Cup, and they're like, we need to get tickets and like all this stuff. So I still think that there's a lot of stuff that is going on there.
Yeah, that's a whole different animal. Yeah, you will see packed stadiums for a World Cup. A World Cup is a different animal altogether. I think you can announce tomorrow, well, obviously that's not how it works, but there's a World Cup game and people will figure out flights and find a way to get there because it's the best, biggest event in the world on the planet. So I just think you can't compare the two.
You want to talk about big things happening around the planet, big teams. It doesn't get much bigger than the LA Lakers. And if anybody's been paying attention, the LA Lakers given a valuation of $10 billion, first of all. Now, I would like to just pump the brakes on everybody. That doesn't mean that's how much somebody paid for the team. That's how much they value the team at because they're selling percentages of the team. So basically, there was a 48% share that was available, and that 48% share it was bought for about $4.8 million, $4.8 billion, and the $4.8 billion then leads to at 100% a $10 billion valuation. Now, why are we talking about that on an LA Galaxy show? And really, it comes down to this: is that the gentleman who bought that portion of the Lakers, Mark Walter, also an owner over at the Dodgers, right? Had at one point, and it was Arash Markazi who was certainly pointing this out today, but had at one point been in to buy AEG with the Guggenheim partners for $7 billion. They were going to pay Phil Anschutz $7 billion for AEG. AEG includes the LA Kings. It includes the LA Galaxy. And then, of course,
Coachella, the festivals.
Yeah, the festivals.
Stagecoach.
All of the concert venues around the world, too, right? So Crypto.com is AEG, right? Like, so LA Live is AEG. All of that is AEG. AEG is a giant in concerts around the world, and I know you guys know that, but something to pay attention to. So, sort of the question brought up by Arash was, is there a chance now that that goes back on the table? If you're going to own the Lakers, if you're going to own that area, the person who has the money to be able to do this is Mark Walter, right? And so if you're like, hey, who could unify? It's almost like a prize fight, right? Where you want to unify everything. If you wanted to unify the Lakers and if you wanted to unify the Kings in their arenas, you would then own the arena and own the team, and you would own all that stuff together. And that's something that hasn't happened here in a while because, obviously the Lakers coming from the Forum and going up to LA Live and all that. The Lakers are technically a tenant there with AEG at Crypto. Now, they're a really good tenant. At one point, AEG even owned, I want to say 27% of the Lakers. But they sold that, I believe, in 2020 or 2021 to Mark Walter as part of the minority shareholder. So Walter was already a minority shareholder. Now he is a majority shareholder. There are things that could happen here. Arash points out that Phil Anschutz ain't getting any younger. He's 86 this year. And so, could there be times, could this be a place where it gets sold? And if it gets sold, the LA Galaxy are there. Is that something that Walter wants? Because Mark would have to sort of make that decision on whether or not he wants to keep the Galaxy. They could spin the Galaxy off and sell the Galaxy off. You could keep the Lakers. You could do a bunch of these different things, Eric. And when you do those things, I think you can find some synergies in sort of what you're trying to do. But it's still something that's interesting out there right now.
Yeah, it's something that sends kind of shockwaves through Los Angeles. Obviously, not being there right now, but being a lifetime Lakers fan and just knowing how intertwined the Buss family was with the organization and everything there and what that meant on their, rise to success and all the championships and all the history that goes with it there. So as the Buss, Dr. Buss passed away and the kids were in ownership and, Jeannie Buss has been heavily involved in the Suns as well. Kind of seeing where the direction that the franchise is going to go as a Lakers fan, it kind of makes you nervous. But then when you see someone, like Walter, who's involved with the Dodgers, and you see the Dodgers are just going and buying the best players and making it work. So it's kind of a happy ending, for the Lakers and the Buss family because they kind of get a cash out. They get to kind of, cash in everything that their father built, and then they get a new ownership group who obviously is going to have the funds to spend money to build up that Lakers organization. And then, like you mentioned, possibly adding other teams into the portfolio or other groups, like AEG and everything that comes along with it. So it is interesting in terms of the power play and what that means and how it's going to impact the teams around us. I do think, you say I mentioned after 2020, the Lakers courtside seats, that's no longer going to be a thing for our Galaxy. Seeing who the next signing is going to come. Is that something that goes away? Right. That's something that stays part of it. It's a silly thing, but it is something that kind of goes into the calculation. So it is curious. He also owns part of, Chelsea, I believe, is one of the group. There's a lot of different teams that are involved. So if you're playing Monopoly and collecting a bunch of the properties there, it does make sense. If AEG is something that's on the table, it's attractive, not for just the Galaxy per se, but everything that kind of comes along with it. So it is interesting to how this is going to possibly impact the Galaxy. It seems weird, but the Lakers being sold for or not being sold, but majority share being sold, how that's going to impact the Galaxy. But there is some domino effects, so we'll see if it works out.
Ming in the chat room brings up a correct point, which is the Whitecaps are for sale right now. We know the Earthquakes are for sale right now. So there could be a new, fresh set of owners in Major League Soccer, maybe ones that want to spend some money. I really think the Earthquakes are going to benefit so much from getting new ownership. I'm excited. Yeah. The Whitecaps are sort of on their way up, and I think they could benefit a lot from new ownership as well. So if you get some deep-pocketed people who think that there's still value within Major League Soccer, then this could happen. So
there's also, there's also the conspiracy theory piece, or I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory piece, but where when you have these high evaluations, if you start talking about expansion, well, the NBA has been talking about expansion. Well, if the Lakers are valued at 10 billion, then if we want to expand into Seattle, into Vegas, that's been a rumor in the NBA, then this now inflates what a new owner is going to have to pay. So with San Jose and Vancouver, whatever those valuations turn out to be and what they're bought for, that's going to impact who's going to be, lucky team number 30 or 31 or 32 that comes into MLS, and what the owners are going to get out of that. So this all plays into where the league is going to go and how much money they're going to have to spend.
Well, and remember we saw that list not too long ago that sort of pointed out what the sort of the highest valued teams in soccer around the world were, and there are 3 or 4 MLS teams on the bottom of that top 20, including LAFC, LA Galaxy, Miami, are all right there and right around that $1 billion valuation, right? So really interesting to see how that plays out. If AEG does get sold, that would put an actual valuation on the Galaxy as well, right? Mm-hmm. And so you'd have to sort of figure out what portion of that was the Galaxy and how that would sort of go. So again, super interesting times. We'll watch how that goes. But as of right now, there's no indications that Phil Anschutz is going to sell. Or that wants to sell. Remember, he wanted to sell at one time, and then Tim Leiweke, I think he got fed up with Leiweke sort of putting a deal together and how that deal came together, and then pulled everything off the market. I remember talking about that over the years. So we'll see how that sort of plays out. Again, as of right now, AEG owns the LA Galaxy, the LA Kings, and all of the AEG sportswear, sports arenas, concert venues, all those fun things around the world, and maybe perhaps they're just gonna keep those for a while. But that was something at least interesting in MLS news, or at least MLS adjacent news, certainly Los Angeles news. The other thing that sort of dropped today was just jersey sales, and we always do the top selling jerseys in 2025. Nobody's going to be surprised that the top one is Lionel Messi. I know, you're right.
I was going to say, I always marvel at this just with, and again, I don't know how this comes across, but with how many knockoffs there are as well.
Right.
With how many knockoff Messi jerseys and things from sketchy websites and parking lots, and then to still be the top selling jersey, it's really impressive, especially for someone like Lionel Messi.
Yeah, it is. Certainly interesting to watch and how that goes. But Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, Miguel Almiron, Irving Lozano, let's see, Darlington Nagbe is in there at number 5. That one was a little bit of a shock. Jordan Morris there, Wilfred Zaha, Diego Chara, let's see, who else? Rossi's in at 10.
Patrick Aubameyang's a surprising one at 9.
At 9, he is.
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte has a couple of them, because Westwood is in there as well.
Yeah,
Ashley Westwood at number
3.
11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he's in there. You sort of go down. The bottom line is the Galaxy get their first one at 15, and that's Marco Reus, which I thought that was pretty interesting to see. The one, of course, that is the hysterical one is number 20, and that's Ricky Puig. Ricky Puig hasn't played a minute this year.
I love it.
And is the number 20 overall jersey on the roster. No Peck, no Paintsil, I think mostly because of the way the Galaxy have played, and they were probably more on borderline on some of these, trying to get into the top 25. But you have to imagine if they're playing well that rebounds and sort of gets pushed up into that. But again, Marco Reus at 15, Ricky Puig at 20. Yes, there's a ton of surprises on this list. You're like, okay, scratching your head. But overall, the number one leader, I don't know, is that one wasn't a surprise.
Yeah, I always have these theories on because it's 2025, it's new jersey sales. So then, someone like, Chucky Lozano on there makes a lot of sense because they're a new franchise. They're new to the league. Someone like Wilfred Zaha makes sense because, he's new to the league. So there's going to be a lot of new jersey sales. But that's where that theory gets thrown out of the water with someone like a Darlington Nagbe, who's been at Columbus for a little while. And maybe it's because, they came out with new jerseys. So again, you do see the jerseys that are on there. Sometimes it's the newer version of the jersey. So like you see Royce and Puig, it's showing them in the Ryzen kit.
I don't believe that has.
I don't know.
So I don't think that has anything. I think it's just all versions of the
marketing
kit. It's just straight up. It's like, well, this is the kit that they put out this time. I don't know that.
There goes my theory as well.
Okay.
Yeah, there goes my theory as well. But so that's what makes you could never ask me to predict who's going to be your top 15 or your top 20 just because number one's going to be Messi, but everything else. It is kind of surprising to see where they land.
Yeah, it always is. Just looking at the LA Galaxy as we sort of try to see what's coming out. Again, you have the LA Galaxy playing Colorado. That's going to happen on Wednesday, June 25th. 6:30 p.m. is the TV start time. 6:40 p.m. is going to be your kickoff time. That's on MLS Season Pass. So that is the Wednesday game. Then the LA Galaxy, just 3 days later, will, of course, head up to Stanford Stadium to play the San Jose Earthquakes. And so those are the next two. We talked about by the end of this road trip, the Galaxy will have played 4 more away games than they have home games. That's certainly putting some stress on everything everything that's going on with them. So realistically, Eric, if we just look at the next 2 games, what is a realistic points haul for this? Are you okay with the Galaxy getting points in all 3 of these away games that they played, and then coming back and having to defend their 3 home games that they have in a row coming up rapidly here, one of them against the Vancouver Whitecaps?
Man, you're asking the tough questions, because you say if they get a point at Colorado and a point at San Jose, you say, okay, hey, they got points at every single game. You should be happy about that. But I think given how they start the season, they need to find ways to unlock a win.
Right.
And I think Colorado, there's an opportunity to sneak out of there. I know the elevation is tough, and I know the there are other factors, but we've seen stranger things happen before. And then San Jose, we've seen them play San Jose close earlier this year, so there's no reason why they can't go in and spoil San Jose. San Jose in previous years that haven't looked as good as the Galaxy ended up beating them, so why not let this be a bizarro thing where it works in reverse? So I think given how they started the season, I think you need to find a way to get at least 4 points out of this 3-game stretch. I don't think 3 points is good enough. You're going to need to start figuring out different ways to win. I think you have to measure this on a different metric. I don't think you can be happy with a draw at each game.
Yeah. Here's what I'm going to say is if we're playing by go ahead.
Another thing. Okay. I was going to say, I was treating this like they drew St. Louis, but I almost forgot that they did draw St. Louis. I thought they lost with how that game felt, how it ended.
No, it would be 3 points from 3 games. It would keep them undefeated in 4. You would have basically survived a 3-game road trip. For me, the point is okay. It's just not ideal for what ideally you'd like to start stealing some of these away games.
Yes.
And I don't know what that means, by the way. I don't know if that means anything. I don't have a lot of faith that even if the Galaxy went on some sort of, tear here, that they're going to be in a position for the playoffs. But the bottom line is we don't get to talk about that until they do, right? So, sort of watching this, I'll say that if the formula was win all your home games and draw all your away games, and this is sort of what they're trying to do, and they end up winning the 3 home games, and, again, if you can't trust this team further than you can throw them, I'm not necessarily saying any of this is going to happen. But if you could do that, then you put yourself in a better position, right? And so maybe that makes some sense. The problem is that the Galaxy are sort of going to have to live, because they have 4 more away games than they do home games right now, because they're in that deficit, Eric. Like the results are going to lag for them. And they've been lagging all year. They've been behind in terms of home games and away games, which doesn't help. Even if they were a good team at this point, you would expect that they would be, not near the top, because the home games, the evenness of the schedule has not been there. So usually, and in Major League Soccer, we know there's a huge advantage for playing at home, and there's a huge disadvantage for playing on the road. And that means something whenever you have, 4 less and you're constantly chasing. Now it means less to the LA Galaxy, who are in 15th place in the Western Conference, and looking up at everybody. Again, none of this will really matter, and not paying attention, sort of looking at the next 2 games in terms of Colorado, and looking at, away at San Jose. If you can steal one of those wins, if you can get a draw, then all of a sudden maybe you're starting to see something. But again, you can't trust this team, and I'm certainly not going to start trusting them right now. They have to prove it to me. They have to earn the trust a little bit here, Eric. They have to earn it. So
I think one of the things that comes into play here is also, why is home field advantage important? It's because of how big this country is and where travel becomes a major issue. So when you think about, okay, San Jose, that's not a huge travel thing where it's going to hurt them. It's not like they're going away, to Montreal or to Orlando. So you kind of need to look at these little micro road trips and say, okay, can we take some points here? Colorado's a little bit more of a trip, and then when you factor in the elevation, but this is not cross country. This is not huge body clock changes. Right. So I do think these are your opportunities to steal points. And I think at this point in the season, it's not about, and I mentioned after 10 games that the season was done. It's not about going on a run and finding a way to kind of get into the playoffs late. It's about playing for, okay, are we going to be the team that went the whole season and didn't win a road game?
Right.
Are we going to be the team that is going to have the longest, losing streak in MLS history? I think that becomes a factor and just gets heavier and heavier. And we saw that when they got their first win of the season, that huge weight that kind of came off the shoulders of the Galaxy. And I think you need to do the same thing with an away win. At some point, you need to get an away win to have that on your record and to start climbing a little bit and not, single digits at this point of the season is really embarrassing. And I think that's why you need to be going for broke. And, at this point, if you lose another game, is it really going to hurt you? But if you go for broke and try to steal three, that you at least have something to hang your hat on. So I think we're getting to that kind of do or die, play for pride situation. Right. So you just don't want that mark of we're the one team that didn't win a road game or hasn't won a road game yet this season. That's where it starts to, get into the pride territory.
Well, and I think the other thing you're looking at is League's Cup performance, right? You're going to want to start sort of crowning or cresting into that League's Cup and see how you can play there. You have Campeones Cup that'll come up in September. So there's like little things that are sort of going to stick out to where you need to have the team firing and ready. You go in and have a good performance in the League's Cup, that's going to raise sort of your momentum. It's going to make you feel a little bit better. If you can go out and win a Campeones Cup, which at this point right now would be, is just a handful of wish,
But I think that's where you throw all your eggs in that basket. If and this is like a very Tottenham thing, with winning their Europa League
right
win. It's like, if you can walk away, given how terrible the season is, and you walk away with hardware against the league, I think that's you take those little victories where you can. And I think we're going to get to a point where wherever games are scheduled around that Campeones Cup match, I think you need to throw your eggs in that basket.
Larry Morgan Not on Twitter reached out to me today. He was talking. Shout out to Larry Morgan Not on Twitter.
Can he fix your computer?
Yeah, no, he should be able to. He'll fix my computer for sure. But he asked me. He said, what have you been most disappointed with the LA Galaxy this year? What one thing is the most disappointing thing? I open that to you, Eric. I got to think about it for a little bit. Mine's too simple to sort of be any like fun, catchy. Oh, this is a hot take. I'm not even saying it's a hot take, but what has been the most disappointing thing that you've sort of experienced or seen with the LA Galaxy on the field this year?
So at first, when I was thinking about this, I'm like, is there one player that has really let me down this season? And I think sadly, there's more than one to list. I don't think you could hang it on one player. But I think the thing that's disappointed me the most this season has been the drop-off in replacement talent. Fair or foul in terms of injuries and figuring out the system and all the other things that go into it. But when you get rid of a Dejan Joveljic, a Mark Delgado, even a Gaston Brugman, a Jalen Neal, you hope, okay, well, we're going to bring in replacements that are going to be as good. And if there's a little drop-off, that's okay. They can figure some things out, but we don't want it to fall off a cliff. I feel like it's fallen off a cliff. From Dejan Joveljic to Ramirez and Nascimento, they haven't been able to get on that level. In the midfield, I like Cerrillo. I like what I see from Parente, but without Ricky Puig, you really miss a Mark Delgado. And I was having a conversation with a friend where Mark Delgado, that really hurts us this year. But I think there is a scenario where you look at your 2027 LA Galaxy and you say, okay, we're paying Mark Delgado what at that point? And I think that's probably why the move was made, but it is going to hurt us this year. And we're going to feel that, especially with how well he's playing for the rivals across the street. So Sanabria, someone who really hasn't kind of lived up to the billing. You're starting to see signs with Nascimento as well and with Sanabria. But to me, it's just the drop off in talent. We lost a lot of important factors that, contributed to MLS Cup. And the replacements are not even close. And you see that with 8 points, through, 19 games played 18 games played. 18 games played, 8 points. That tells you how far the talent fell off a cliff. And especially even someone like, Zanka, that was supposed to come in and bring us experience. And even the drop off in quality from Yoshida, It just seems like the talent really, really took a huge dip. And it almost looks like we're going to need to be in rebuild mode again for 2026.
Well, my big disappointment was the fact that it was just about results, because I haven't been super disappointed with a lot of the play. I've been really disappointed in some of the decisions that have been made, and I think that sort of goes back to your drop off in talent and everything else. But drop off in mindset maybe is a disappointment that I didn't expect. I expected a honeymoon. I expected sort of people to be like, oh, we won an MLS Cup. It's going to take us a little while to get going. Chill out. That type of thing. So I expected that, Eric. I didn't expect them to not be able to win games. They've been good enough to win some of these games, and maybe it's only 5 or 6 But that would be a world of difference right now if you suddenly had 15 more points to the LA Galaxy's, total, right? And just the inability to finish out and to challenge themselves. I know, and maybe this even runs counter to your point. I feel like the Galaxy are talented enough, and I watched them play against, St. Louis, and I think you and I were talking about, perhaps there's a talent gap between St. Louis and the LA Galaxy. I saw it again. I saw the talent gap whenever they were playing, and you're sort of sitting there going, you have the talent gap. How are you not winning this game? How did you not win this game? And so for me, the most disappointing part has been sort of the results, has been the fact that they have played well enough to win some of these games, but have not won any of those games. And I have to place that squarely at, Greg Vanney. I have to place that squarely at the players. They have enough talent. I've seen this team. I've watched this team play. This team has not played boring soccer for me this year. Right? I remember 2017.
Outside of one game.
Yeah, outside of one game. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's where that's been the most frustrating part. And I've been right there with you, and it's not great podcast banter to kind of land on the same page and say, hey, this team that has 8 points, they're not as bad as that seems. And I know that frustrates the heck out of a lot of people who listen, but it is the truth. We saw with St. Louis. I saw great things in St. Louis in that game. I saw, Nascimento kind of figure things out. Peck announcing that he's back and getting a couple of goals, even though he could have had more. But then you saw other things where it's like, okay, where's our, Joao Klaus? Where's our guy who's just a machine?
Right.
I haven't seen someone, with, ability like that to just score golazos since Zlatan. And that's kind of a crazy thing to say. But that's what his performance reminded me of, where he just put St. Louis on his back and made those things happen. But it begs the question, you kind of, I don't know if you hinted at it as the right thing, but, you put this on the players, you put this on Greg Vanney. It makes you raise, is the Greg Vanney conversation over? I get why it is, because if they, given how they started, if they announced the extension, it's not, losing another 10 games is not going to change. Well, why is it different the second time around?
Right.
So I think that's one thing. So if the talent is the talent, then, and maybe we do suck. And if we do, then how do you hide the suckiness? And I think part of that is on Greg. So if the team is, there's a gap and they're unable to figure things out, then part of it, I understand why, there's a frustration with Vanney as well. Because, okay, if we're not able to get things done and they're not closing out games, then where can the coaching go? That's the coach's job, to kind of hide those weaknesses and to, come up with schemes to kind of put yourself in different positions. So that's what makes this whole season a frustration, is they haven't looked as bad as the points say, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like there's wholesale changes or changes in tactics or changes in philosophies that's being addressed to make them, kind of pull out of their funk. It seems like they're still trying to do the same thing and then still getting those same results were a little bit crazy. With the kind of curse of the New York Red Bulls game is that was the one time that you did see a change in tactics.
Right.
And that's the worst loss they had in the season. So it makes you say, well, we're never going to change tactics again. Well, you're on 8 points. So maybe it's a change. Maybe those were the wrong tactics to change to.
Right.
But something does need to change. And I hate that, given Greg Vanney won us MLS Cup and got the extension, that you're still having those question marks around him, and he's continuing to have to prove himself and overcome this adversity. And that's frustrating as well, to see it from the fan perspective.
My meniscus hurt says the greatest team to only win one game. That should be 100%.
Yeah.
Look, I got jams. Goes the 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers played good football and finished 0-14. It's not wrong. It's not wrong. I understand the absurdity. I feel like if you're not locked into it every single day, it's easy to just sort of dismiss this team as bad. And guess what? They're going to be one of the worst LA Galaxy teams in history unless something drastic happens.
Yeah, and I've had that conversation with some casual fans who are like, man, the Galaxy are awful this year. And I'm not going to mention, they're LAFC fans, so of course they're not all the way locked in to the game. And I'm like, yeah, well, if you're not watching the games, I get why you're saying that, but at the same time, it's not as bad as it seems.
Right.
Like when you watch that St. Louis game, it's like, okay, that was not a team actually both teams. Those are not what's propping up the bottom of the Western Conference, given, how that game was. And that's the frustrating thing. You look like an idiot saying it,
Right.
because it's like, what is this guy talking about? They played good. They only have 8 points. So that's just, it drives, this is a team that's 2025 team is driving us crazy.
Joe in the chat room says Klaus had 2 goals in the season before that game, by the way. But yeah, he wasn't hitting bangers. That has more to do with the change in tactics that they sort of have allowed and sort of his evolution there with the new coach and things starting to work out for him. It just happened in that game. He hit some bangers, man. Absolute bangers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
you
one.
just have to tip your cap on those. Yeah. Those last 2. You just have to say, yeah, you know what? Thank you. Thanks for showing us that.
Some of that is that, and the other part is just put a body on him. Just like knock him over.
Yeah.
Like do something. Do anything. You know that guy is, sort of. He didn't do anything that was crazy. He just was really clinical in some of his finishes. I mean, again, I'll tip my hat to the finish, but don't let him get to that point, right? It's one of those you're giving him too much room if he's able to even get those shots off, that type of thing. And you can't guard everything. And I'm certainly not. I will say that if you're on the blame pie, he gets 70% of the success, and the Galaxy get 30% of the blame in terms of leaving him open. I'm not an idiot. I know what I saw with those 2. You're not stopping a couple of those. So that's always fun to sort of look at that. No, I mean that's sort of where we're at with the LA Galaxy. I don't know that there's anything that is satisfactory at this point outside that Marco Royce is the team's player of the year right now. If you're voting, and I don't even think it's close. He has I think 9 goal contributions. And when he's on the field, the LA Galaxy are dangerous. Just he could be player of the year right now just for the pass that he gave Nascimento. I mean, that alone was like, okay, that's the best. That's one of the best passes. Able to meg and sort of play Nasi in and watch Nasi. And again, I understand the replacement on it. I really feel like Nascimento could really pour it on here in the second half, and the Galaxy feel like maybe I already tell you that the team and the players think that they have something in Nasi right now, right? They're starting to get behind him and be like, this guy could be our guy. And if he's our guy, he's going to score a whole bunch of goals. And I like the people who are like, oh, well, why wasn't he playing earlier? We watched him play earlier. None of that was apparent. He's now comfortable. He's there and he's playing. And you're like, oh, now it's clicking in. Now it's working. It doesn't necessarily work from the very beginning.
And we have short memories too. There were a lot of complaints about Dejan Joveljic as well. Kind of, is he a starter when he starts games? He wasn't getting goals. And then, even going into last season, it's like, man, they're putting all their eggs in the Dejan Joveljic basket. And we saw what he was able to do. So let's not have too short term of a memory that the first season with the team is not always bangers all the time. I've seen some positive things. I do want to see more like that. You and I were arguing about that pass from Paintsill. It was I understand it was not a great pass from Paintsill, but
it was
you
a
have to ask
crappy
yourself,
pass.
But you ask yourself, like, would Joao Klaus have found a way to get a foot on that? I think the answer is yes. So I feel like Nascimento, knowing where to position himself to where there was no possibility for a bad pass. I think he was running at a pace that was going to put him in a bad position. I think he could have done better there. So I see the positives and why obviously he's getting the starts over Ramirez. So the team sees something, Vanny sees something, but I feel like I still want more out of him. And I don't know that it's going to come. He could prove me wrong, but I don't know that he's going to be that guy who's the dominant force, who's going to lead our team in goals. I haven't seen that side yet.
In his limited minutes, he's already on the, it's not saying much. Really, it's not. But in team leaders and expected goals, Nascimento is, in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's 7th place right now, and he has like 300 minutes or less than that, right? So technically speaking, his minutes per, and I didn't even look at his XG per 90, because that could actually be pretty high whenever it looks at it. But he's probably as dangerous as Christian Ramirez is right now if we're sort of playing those two. And Ramirez is living a lot on the fact that he had some good games early on and then has completely disappeared since, because Gabriel Peck leads the team in XG at 4.82, and then Ramirez is at 3.81. Nascimento is at 1.16, but again, that's just in his limited minutes that he's had. So already he's on up there in terms of leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. Peck was in the thousands, what's he had, 1,500 minutes, something like that, or 1,300, whatever it is, something in that neighborhood. Yeah. So the fact that he should have so many more goals too. The ball is not falling in for him this season like it was last year too. He's been in positions, but it's not happening for him. So I was really happy to see him at least get the 2 goals to get the mojo going in the right direction.
Right. Let's see. By the way, one of the leaders in XG is Maya Yoshida, right? Which is everybody points out. It's like you're like, really? You're like, yeah, that dude has had how many headers has that dude had inside the box that like either went off the post or just over or just wide?
Yeah,
he's at 1.8.
He's been due for one of those.
He is, absolutely. So we'll see if anything comes in there. All right, the LA Galaxy getting ready to play Colorado on June 25th. That's next Wednesday. That game, you're like getting ready. They're off this
Getting
weekend.
ready, yeah.
I can,
well, eventually.
I can tell you that the LA Galaxy, for the most part, were off this week. Guys went on vacation. Guys got away a little bit. They were able to sort of escape after the game. I believe that they will be back and in training and sort of ready to go starting this weekend, because they'll basically go through a game week just like it's a normal game week as they get ready for the Wednesday. So that Wednesday game coming up fast. So those guys will be back in training. If they weren't training today or tomorrow, they should be. We didn't get a weekly schedule this week that showed when they would be back, but having tried having tried or at least attempted to possibly think about getting a player on tonight, I was told everybody's on vacation, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I get it, 100%. So last thing they want to do.
They don't want to talk to us on.
No,
I was going to say they don't want to talk to us on vacation. The other thing I will mention, if those of you who are interested and curious like myself, where okay, they don't play until next Wednesday, are other teams kicking off on Saturday? And the answer is no. With the Club World Cup going on and the Gold Cup going on, there are no MLS games scheduled this weekend. So the whole league will kick back up on Wednesday. So again, nothing really to look forward to unless you're talking Gold Cup happening, or if you're going to be invested in the Club World Cup. MLS wise, nothing is happening until next Wednesday.
The LA Galaxy U19s, if you've been paying any attention, were in tournament play.
Oh, Dylan
Vanney, 2 goals. I think he had an assist as well. He was the player of the game in a 5-1 win in a U19 El Tráfico over LAFC. I haven't watched a lot of those games. Apparently, between those two teams this year, it has been a lot of back and forth. The LAFC's had some big wins. The Galaxy have had some wins. But this was pretty big, especially in tournament play. Galaxy onto the semifinals at that U19. Dylan Vanney making a name for himself wearing the number 10, playing a whole bunch of minutes, but got pulled in that game because that game was over in the second half. It was 4-0, I think, at halftime, and ended at 5-1. So some good showing from the young G's, and that at least was something that I got to pay attention to a little bit more because there weren't any MLS games going on. It was sort of like, oh, I can watch this. That's awesome.
Especially with a little mini El Tráfico, El Trafiquito, is that what they're calling the U19? So. But I will say Dylan Vanney, obviously with the name recognition, is someone who's going to stand out. But given what he's done for Ventura County as well, he's someone who's kind of raised the eyebrows of like, okay, there's something there.
Right.
With the bangers that he's scored and what he's done at the G2 level, he could be someone who is in the Galaxy fold with a homegrown. I could see this happening in the next couple seasons. That's going to be a name you're going to want to keep an eye on, because the way he's playing at the youth level, it's making people take notice. It's definitely said, okay, this is a player who's standing out amongst that level, and those are the type of guys that you look for. So that's exciting, to see that come through, and especially when you have the connection, with the coach and kind of Vanney's history with the Galaxy outside of just being the coach these last 4 years. It's very cool to see a second generation LA Galaxy player, what that could possibly mean. I just think that's so cool, and I'm looking forward to see what he could do.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. The other thing is, if you haven't watched any of the academy games, they play Vanney ball, right? I mean, this is like, you can watch it all the way up and down, U16s, U19s, U18s. There's all sorts of different mixes in there as you go through, but you can watch it and they play that same sort of build-up possession style. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of different triangles being created, and when it works, you can watch them dominate teams, and it is fun to watch. It's the same thing with the senior team. When it works, you can watch domination happen, and it's fun to watch. But the youth being able to, I think, we saw some of that just with even with Parente coming up, with Cuevas coming up, with Ruben Ramos Jr. coming up, with guys who have played, not necessarily down in the academy, but even with Ventura County, and then coming up, that there's a familiarity with the system.
Yeah, they don't look lost.
No, and so it's sort of fun to watch that progress and go on. So that's what we got. That was the only fun sort of little side note that I had there that was at least LA Galaxy related. We expect everything to kick back off. And, of course, on Monday night, we'll be back with the Panda himself and get you ready for that game on Wednesday against Colorado. Anything else you want to touch on, Eric? Otherwise, we can get out of here.
I'll take this chance. because you're mentioning about, the G2 level players kind of coming up and not looking lost. One thing the FIFA Club World Cup got right is the referee cam. And when you see that referee cam and the speed of the game, it's so impressive. It's like, no wonder referees make mistakes, or no wonder players who come up from a level below struggle finding the pace of the game. Baxter talked about it on Monday when talking to Julian, adjusting to the speed of the game when you bump up different levels. And I think that's something that if MLS is going to adopt something like the referee cam, then that's something, if you haven't checked it out, definitely look for the referee cam. And then last thing I want to give shout out to Cynthia and Michael, who were at the last home game. They sent me a Joseph Paintsill Star Wars bobblehead that would have been on the live show today. But, shout out to people who are still thinking about the hammer, grabbing some of those giveaways that I know are hard to come by. But, shout out to them for thinking of me during that time and sending the bobblehead. It will be on display once you get all this video stuff figured out.
Yeah, we'll work to figure that out. Again, I'll strangle teams into submission as we go through this. One last thing, we were supposed to have a visit from the Star Squad and Cosmo down at the Train Club on Sunday. Cosmo's on the injured reserve. Cosmo,
oh no!
Yes, Cosmo is not doing well. Poor Cos. But Cosmo's not doing well on injured reserve, so we're going to reschedule that trip. So we're gonna push everything off. We'll tell you whenever that happens again. But we want to make sure Cosmo can be out there for everybody, and it wouldn't be the same
recovery, Cosmo. We're with you.
We're with you, buddy. So get better. I believe it was a paw that was injured on that. So
is that what
I have
you
no
refer
idea.
to it as a paw?
I have no idea.
Say,
a hand,
an antenna,
antennae, right? I have no idea. Whatever it is, but yeah. So Cos on the injured list. In only 2025 could bring us Cosmo on the injured list. I'd just like to point that out. So 2025. I did hear that Greg Vanny said that he thought it was growing. That's what I heard. He thought, but that's not true. I heard it's an appendage of however you measure an alien appendage, which feels dirty all of a sudden. I'm just gonna walk away.
You
from
made
that.
it weird.
I don't want to make it weird. I was just trying to be open and honest about Cosmo. But yeah, we'll get Cosmo back at the Train Club. We'll let you know whenever it is. But free ride's still going on this weekend, so if you'd like to stop on by, there's no Galaxy games, so come on down. 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. at Fairview Park in Costa Mesa. OCMEtrains.org is where you can find all the information for that. And I am there both days for most of the time, unless I'm stopping to get lunch or something like that. So make sure you wave and say hi to me and tell me that you're a listener, and I'll make sure I say hi, and we'll get you situated on a train. So that's where we are. All right, all good.
Good times. We kept it to a tight 30 today.
Tight 30, as always. Eric, tell people where they can find you. We'll get on out of here.
All right, as always, you can find me on social media at HammerEV9. So that's Hammer EV and the number 9.
If you're looking for me on any of the social medias, it's at Galaxy Podcast, cornerofthegalaxy.com. YouTube is, of course, where you can find us. Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, all those places. Type in Corner of the Galaxy. All right, LA Galaxy not playing this weekend. They'll be back on Wednesday. We'll be back on Monday night with the Baxter. Get you ready for that away game in the Mile High City. All right, for Mr. Eric, the Portuguese Hammer Vieira, I'm Josh Pato Gessman. You've been listening. You've been watching the Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.